Lately, I've been thinking about the wise men who brought Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Nativity sets can make us think that they saw the star, grabbed their incredibly symbolic and generous gifts, hopped on some camels, and made their way to the manger. But the records indicate that the wise men met up with Jesus when he was a toddler. Traditionally, it's believed that Jesus was about 3 years old when the Magi arrived. Of course, we don't know the precise timing of their arrival, or even when they took note of the prophesied star. But I like to imagine the journey from the star sighting to seeing the face of the young Messiah took all 3 years. Because for me, it seems like that's how God works. I wonder, was there a time in those 3 years of travel and searching that they questioned what they were doing? If in all that time, one or more of them wondered if they had made a mistake or felt frustrated in the difficulty of the task of finding a baby by following a star? Were there others? Perhaps there were other men and women who were just as knowledgeable about astronomy and divine promise, who set out on a journey to find the Redeemer and just gave up too soon. Sometimes I wonder if I give up too soon. Assume failure or mistake long before it's time. In the book Learning the Language of the Lord by Lynn Hilton Wilson, she writes about a time when her husband decided to apply for a temporary position in France. She remembers praying intently about whether or not this was the right thing for their family, and felt strong promptings that she should prepare herself and their children for their upcoming time in France. She naturally became very excited about the prospect of the opportunity. So much so that when she told a family friend about it, she talked about it as if her husband had already gotten the job. Her friend asked, "So an offer has been made? You're really moving to France?" To which she had to say no, but she felt sure that it was the Lord's will. Her friend smiled and said, "Haven't you ever misunderstood a prompting before?" Turns out her husband did not get the job, leaving her feeling confused and a little chastised by her friend's question. She couldn't account for why she felt so strongly that she needed to prepare to live in France. But life moved on, and she mostly chalked up her feelings about France to foolish excitement and misplaced hopefulness. Then, 5 years later, her husband was offered a different job in France. Turns out she was right to believe that the Lord had intended for her to prepare to live abroad, just not about when or why. She recounted that she wished she had listened to the promptings and used those 5 years to learn French instead of writing off the whole situation as a total misunderstanding. I like that story because it means that I'm not the only one to bungle promptings, and neither is Lynn nor her friend. It's turtles all the way down, as they say. I'm going to guess that we all do it. Get a prompting, think it means one thing, and then feel like we're experiencing spiritual whiplash when we realize we were wrong in our interpretation. I have, on a lot of occasions, assumed that the prompting was wrong, when in fact, I was wrong. The most staggering example of this mistake comes from Judas Iscariot. Judas was a zealot, meaning he was deeply invested in the Jewish rising against the Romans to free Israel. When he encountered Jesus, he clearly saw the ultimate leader, the King of Kings, the man who would usher in God's kingdom. And so he followed him, excited at the prospect of a free and powerful Israel. But Judas was wrong. The promptings he received to trust and follow Jesus were eternally correct, but his idea of Jesus as the Messiah was wrong. And his misunderstanding of the promptings turned out to be fatal for both Jesus and himself. The thing is, it didn't need to work out that way. Nothing would have stopped Jesus from fulfilling his mission to become the atonement between us and God, but it didn't require that Judas betray him. Judas could have gone on, confused and a little disappointed by Jesus' lack of interest in military action, and just waited to see what he meant when he said that he had come to rescue Israel. He could have been like Thomas, a little dubious, but ultimately committed to discipleship all the same. And if he had, he could have seen the glory of the resurrected Jesus. But Judas grew angry and impatient when his understanding of the circumstances of his life wasn't panning out the way he had imagined. He wrongfully assumed that the promptings were wrong, when what was wrong was his understanding, his idea of what the miracle should be. Promptings are like little miracles leading us along to the bigger miracles of our lives. But we don't get to dictate the miracle to the Lord. It's not for us to say what should come to pass, when and how, but it is for us to trust and follow, even when it doesn't pan out the way we thought it would. Maybe especially when it doesn't pan out the way we thought it would. I think God wants to know if we'll just keep going, just keep trusting, even when we wonder if we're being stupid. Lynn might have felt self-conscious if she had decided to take French classes even after her husband didn't get the job, but it would have paid off. Judas may have felt dissatisfied for a week longer when Jesus marched to Golgotha under the weight of a cross instead of with a sword in hand, but if he had just been willing to wait and see, Judas would have gone down in history in a radically different way. Of course, the stories of Judas, the gift-bearing wise men, and Lynn Wilson run the length of the spiritual spectrum, but we all fall on that spectrum. So if you face the confusion of a prompting that doesn't add up the way you imagined it would, just ask yourself, haven't you ever misunderstood a prompting before? And live with faith, because maybe in a week, or 3 years, or 5 years, it'll be worth the effort.